Hello and welcome. I am Constellation Gaming, and this is the second day of Decklist December. Uh, Today I've got another list that I ended up topping a tournament, few tournaments back ago. Uh, I call it Frost Twos. Uh, I just really enjoy this deck. It's probably one of my favorite decks. Currently in the meta, I don't think it's that great against Earth and Thunder. Those are kind of where this deck honestly that's the weak point of this deck is just those two, and they're just strong right now. Uh, so it's a fun deck. I don't think it's necessarily a consistently topping deck, at least not currently. I think Self Mill will get a lot better uh, in next set with Blistrix and all that coming. But without further ado, here is my deck list for Frost 2s. Uh, So first, and kind of the weirdly enough, part of the core of this deck that makes this deck function the way it is, even though I'm not playing Morfrost, is this little Morfrost engine here. I've got two Lycan form, two in this. That's it. Uh, no A-bomb, playing some terror in the sideboard, but don't really. It's not really what it's for the most part. It's just you want to see one of the Lycan forms in your opening hand, uh, so that way you can expend one, because Frost likes to play with its spirits in the grave, unfortunately. So you gotta play a little risky sometimes, very aggressive with this deck, to be honest. You just gotta keep your foot on the gas and hope that they eventually break. You just kind of hope something eventually breaks, whether they run out of guys or eventually they run out of runes from constantly dealing with your threats. Next, I've got two Morlith here. Uh, so the best opener is like you want to have Morfrost Indus, or not Indus, you want to have Morfrost Lycan with Morlith. What that allows you to do is you take the Lycan, you expend the one, send it to the grave. And then if you're playing first, well, pretty much regardless of whether you're playing first or second, as long as it's turn one, they're guaranteed to not have less Alestrals in the grave than you. So then you can just instantly turn one, drop Moralith. Downside of Moralith is you got to mill 5 cards. Uh, currently, currently a downside. Let's say that because this card will go nuts the more that the season or the more that cards come out, the more options that self mill has, uh, to where it won't necessarily feel as much of a downside. Right now, it is a pretty big downside, especially if you hit some of your other bigger guys with it or some of your very impactful runes. Next, to kind of help get our little engine going, we're playing Green Narpoon. Narpoon is really good for multiple reasons. Just a 4/3 body is really good. Uh, it allows you to search out any one-cost Frost Celestial, so very diverse. Um, and yeah, they're just very, very hard to deal with for the most part. Sometimes just sticking Narpoon on and then a back row is honestly enough because then you can just hard ascend over the Narpoon because you want to misenchant most of the time anyways. So it works out. Narpoon is just fantastic in this deck. Best, but by far the best searcher you could have asked for this deck. Then you've got two Cryling. Uh, Only two because I don't want to play three Cryovern, and I feel like I've ran into a lot of situations where I was running three Cryoline and I just sat there with the third one in hand because I would turbo out two Cryovern in a single turn, or I would just go through both of the Cryolines and Cryoverns, and I just sat there with the third Cryoline. So yeah, obviously Cryoline pairs with the two Cryovern. Uh, Cryoburn just really good. Pretty much always misenchanted. Uh, so if you look at it between these three cards, you pretty much, as long as you're in the mid game, you kind of have seven copies of Cryoburn. Because Narpoon searches out Cryolane, or it can search out if you happen to have one of your Cryolanes in the grave because you milled it, or some other stuff like that. You can search out your one of Frostics, so that way you can just, it's possible to literally play Cryolane, use Cryolane ability, throw it in the grave. Cryovern will be out, then you cast Frostics. Yeah, use an Frostics ability, bring back Cryolane, then play out another Cryovern, and you can just pop off very quickly ha with having Frostics, which is part of why I think that once more cards come out and once you don't really have to run the more Frost engine to kind of catalyst the self mill, I think it'll be a lot better. Uh, because anything that you hit, you can just possibly resummon back with your Enfrostics, and that's really good. Start acting like your grave is the second hand, essentially. Uh, Eddie. Eddie's really good. Eddie plays around pretty much every single counter in the game except for Gorgon's Gaze. Uh, you don't want to shield it, can't tsunami it, PTA, it can pretty much kill everything. So yeah, got the three Eddie. Two Boombat. Boombat just big guys that I can't deal with. There are some cases like Wasp Ivy is one that's kind of hard to get over because this deck caps at 7 attack, which is why Earth and Thunder are pretty good against this deck because they can use Zeus and Demeter to get over or hit exactly 7 for the most part. Then because you want to go through spirits so quick, gotta have 2 Katarant, gotta heal yourself to be able to keep playing. There's been times, I mean, with Enfrostic, sometimes it's just a free cast out of an Celestial because you expend the 2, play out Katarant, heal 2 back. Free cast out. Sometimes you can do that, hard to send over it. There's a lot of different plays with Katarant. Uh, Even just re-enchanting him sometimes endgame is really good because especially if you have back row, you can just continuously play your back row for free essentially. And then we have the one of Lavalith because Lavalith is Lavalith. Lavalith is broken. Lavalith is limited to 1 for a reason, so we're gonna play the Lavalith. And that will do it for our entire suite of Alestrals. Kind of heavy on the Alestral side because a lot of these are thinning. So these 4 thin, the Cryoline thins the deck, the Narpoon thins the deck. So a lot of times, even though it seems weird and it feels uncomfortable, sometimes you'll just sit there with like 5, 6 Alestrals in hand, which sounds unappealing, but then you got to remember if you thin out all of your Alestrals and you're sitting there with those in hand, that means you're pretty much continuously drawing into runes, which is also a good part of this deck, is even though it plays less runes, like it plays pretty much the same amount of counter runes as most decks, but even though it doesn't play, like, really doesn't play a divine and other stuff like that, you can just kind of, uh, yeah, you can you just play less and thinning the deck works out really well because you just aren't playing or running into stuff you don't want to draw. Anyways, kind of brain fogged there. Couldn't speak for a second. We're gonna continue. Nectar of the Gods, pay 2, draw 2. Most decks, I do not play this card at all, to be honest, because yeah, draw 2 is great, but again, anytime you play something, you are paying your life total. So paying 2 life to draw 2 is nice, don't get me wrong, but at the same time, luck factors, I don't draw this till most of the time late game. Like I've been in situations where I've just drawn two of these in a row late game, and it just doesn't work very well. But in this deck, with this deck in particular, because you're playing the Cryolines and stuff like that, you really want to have the Frost spirits in your grave. So Nog is a lot better for this deck in particular. Um, Three Gorgons. Gorgons is the best counter in the game. Says no to literally everything. Can't go wrong with Gorgons. Three Shield. Pretty much just like shield is mainly against the big guy strategies. Sometimes it's to protect your smaller, like uh two attack Celestials, like your Morphost and crap like that. Uh, just so you can ascend over it next turn. Then we've got three Tsunami here. Uh, Tsunami is just really good. The ability to just essentially nullify an entire attack phase if they're not in water, just really good. Ambrosia, again, to play everything in this game that costs your life. So playing Ambrosia recoups your life, recoups your ability to play the game. Uh, Poison Tipped Arrow, this deck, even though it can run over some stuff, there's just stuff that you really want to PTA. Viserys is one of them, for example, because Viserys can just get out of control if you don't take care of it. Viserys himself, with his abilities, can just end up getting over your guys after a little bit if he's got two, three of them. So yeah, PTA is just really important. Equal links, even though you don't play too much back row, you're not setting a bunch of stuff. Uh, PTA, you just still want to shoot equal links as quick as possible. And then there is the one of resting. I would like to play the one of Earthquake too. However, the spear count is exceptionally tight with this deck because you have to have Frost in the graveyard, so you have to have more Frost than in like than you would if you were playing an Earth beatdown deck and playing Earth Spirits. You can't really give up as many to other colors as you would like to with Frost because you have to have them in the grave too, and you still have to be able to play your Frost stuff. So then we'll move over to the side deck here. Side deck, one Catarant. Uh, just if games are going longer, you need more heals. Pretty good. Uh, Infrostics, for the same reason that I explained earlier, if I notice they're a little light on back row, or if I notice that they have a lot of kill spells, Infrostics is really good into those matchups. Galaxy. Galaxy is literally just four other galaxies, essentially. Galaxy is the biggest silver bullet to this deck, and the reason being is you almost never want to properly enchant the Cryovern. You almost always want to enchant it with water to play around Tsunami. And playing it with water means that Galaxy swaps it to a 4, while Galaxy is a 5. So Galaxy is a one-cost answer to your Cryoverns. So you need Galaxy to kill the other galaxies. Two Cryoblast in case you need more removal and they're not on too many stadiums. If they're on stadiums, this card is a lot harder to get off, and it's a lot harder to have it actually work out in your favor. But if they're not on stadiums, they're playing a list that just doesn't have it, or they happen to not have the stadium. Cryoblast is really good conditional removal. Two mountains for those stadium type matches for the Earth, the Thunder, because if I hit 8, 9 attack, those are thresholds that are a lot harder for those two decks to beat over. And even just misenchanting Cryovern having the one spirit on it makes it an 8 attacker, and it makes it so it can't get over it. And then Moralith is pretty much always going to have the two spirits on it, so it's an 8 attacker, 6 defense. It's really good. Uh, Here's where my side deck kind of gets interesting, and it actually differs from my tournament results, or my tournament, because I didn't really like my sideboard last time, kind of swapped it up, got inspiration from a different tournament list. So I kind of just swapped into a little, or put in the side deck the ability to swap a little bit into Frost Nexus. Not fully, but Broomlinks is really good. Being able to just flip a Divine Rune. If you're playing against Scrap, you can literally just flip one of their artifact rooms, make that slot completely useless. Like, locking a slot for runes is actually a lot more powerful than you'd think. Then there's two Kione. Just in case there's a lot of removal, I swap into the Earth Nexus type strategy. Uh, yeah, can bring back Cryoline for a second go around, can bring back Infrostix two hands so I can use the same Infrostix twice in one turn with a Kione, which is really nice. Um, uh, but the point of all that really is to just play Big Terror. Uh, Morfrost Terror says whenever your opponent's Celestial gets -1 attack for each Frost enchanting this Morfrost. So if you have multiple on it, their attack just dwindles down lower and lower, and they can't really get over anything. And you can also uh, discard the Indus and the Lichen forms that you don't really care about in order to protect him, which is really good, actually. And then there is Dense Fog. Dense Fog, uh, really, it's just a galaxy tech. None of my guys, past when they land, care at all about their ability. Like, oops, like, at all. So, if I don't have guys that care about my abilities unless it's upon entry, then Dense Fog is pretty good. I might genuinely think about siding another one into it. I haven't really got to do too many test runs with the Dense Fog in the side deck, so we'll check. We'll see on that. But that is the main and the side. Now we'll go to spirits here. Alright, so for Frost, I've got 3, 6, 9, 12, 13. 13 Frost. And it seems like a lot, and that's because it is. But essentially, 5 of these you want to have in your grave at all time. So I pretty much have 8 Frost I can work with, which is not that much. It's less than most decks genuinely play in their spirit deck, so it's kind of a weird balancing act sometimes between trying to have spirits in grave and trying to not die. Um, then just 4 Leviathan, because got tsunamis, got gorgons, or not gorgons, galaxies. You have the eddies. So yeah, and you have the Narpoons, so you need a decent amount of water. Um, 2 fire spirits for the one of Lavalith, and then 1 thunder for the boom bats. And that wraps up the list. Um, yeah. This is personally one of my favorite decks. Like I said, I don't necessarily think it's a consistently topping deck. It can take it's kind of a rogue pick in my opinion, can take some games. But I don't think it's going to be nearly as consistent until we get at least next set. So if you like this video, if you like this deck, give it a like, subscribe, and I hope you enjoy. Any changes you guys would make to the deck, comment. Would love to hear some of the thoughts. Uh, Thank you very much for tuning in, and I will see you tomorrow for another deck list.